work is service. So in order to reach the level of worshiping, the bar has to be raised. And then if you're worshiping through your work or working with the enemy or whoever hates you, is you're not working for that individual. You dedicated your work to the manifestation, to God. So really you're operating in front of Him. Just think about it. You're working in the Baha'i sitting there, and it said, I'm giving you this work to you. Would you shortchange anything? Would you behave badly? Just think about it.
No mediocrity allowed.
There's no mediocrity left there. See, this is where you think nobody's up watching, and you're at the end of the day, you got to get out of here. You're tired. You shortcut things. This is where mediocrity is.
You know, at the Noah's party that we went to, I met a woman who was there as a guest of one of the Baha'is, and she was talking about how things were really difficult because her mother was like 90 something and she was primary caregiver and you know. But I assured her, as Baha'u'llah has assured us, that if you are consider the service you're doing for your mother as serving God, and that is the high service that you can do. And I think she was happy to hear that you know, her life that she was spending serving her mother, and very difficult, was actually what God would want her to do.
One thing also that struck me on section number 14 was that the phrase of Baha'u'llah, creating a new race of men compared to what race of men we have now in the world. And what does that require? How do you reform what we have? Section 15.
Yes.
Accompanying one another on the path of service is not only a process through which lessons are learned, in action and reflection on action. Another effective instrument for learning is the reflection gathering of a group of friends engaged in the same area of activity. Rodrigo's junior youth group has already met 4 times. Throughout, Monica has lent him her assistance and at the same time has learned a great deal herself. During a conversation about the progress made by the youngsters, both individually and as a group, Monica informs Rodrigo of a reflection gathering to which all animators in the cluster, old and new, are invited. Rodrigo is excited about the possibility of learning from the experiences of other young people like himself. 1 week in advance, Andres, the coordinator for the junior youth program in the cluster, meets with Monica, Leticia, and Luciano, who are assisting him with coordination, each accompanying 1 or more animators, in order to consult about the content of the reflection gathering. After prayers, he describes briefly the current state of all the core activities in the cluster and notes that the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program has advanced considerably in recent cycles. The 4 of them then discuss the progress of all the groups one by one. In thinking about the content of the gathering, Andres reminds his friends that undertaking visits to parents is an ongoing area of learning. In fact, one of the accomplishments of the expansion phase in the present cycle has been the large number of thoughtful conversations that were held with the parents, not only of the junior youth, but also the children participating in Baha'i classes and of the youth carrying out core activities. They all agree that the first part of the gathering should be dedicated to consultation on the experience accumulated in this area, since it would benefit all the animators, at which stage the group may be. Knowing how much Leticia, who has been accompanying several animators, has learned about the nature of conversations with parents. Andres asked her to facilitate consultation on the topic. They next examined the list of participants. As they do so, they realized that the animators can be organized into 3 groups according to the length of their experience. They identify a relevant topic for each of the 3, the dynamics of a junior youth group in the early stages of its formation, the study of the glimmerings of hope and thinking about numbers, and service projects. The 3 collaborators will each facilitate consultation on one topic in one group, and Andres will rotate among the groups. About an hour before the end of the gathering, the small group will come together to share their insights. Andres asks Luciano, who is part of a team composing and gathering songs that reflect the nature of the spiritual movement in the cluster, to arrange the devotional portion of the gathering. Throughout their consultation, Andres, humility, and love make it easy for the 3 collaborators to participate and express their views. Monica notices how Andres has avoided giving them instructions. She observes how attentively he listens to every word they utter, and how aptly he guides the deliberations, helping them to see the milestones they have reached. To identify objects of learning, and to envision the next steps to be taken. The reflection gathering is held with the participation of over 20 animators. It unfolds much the way it has been planned. The spirit is high, and as is always the case with such meetings, there is a leap in collective understanding. At the end, Andres announces the date for 2 days of intensive study dedicated to the analysis of several texts used in the junior youth program. As everyone prepares to leave, Monica gets a chance to converse with Rodrigo. She is delighted to listen to the insights he has gained from the consultations amongst the animators. On the way out, Andres approaches Monica and asks her if she is able to dedicate a little more time to the development of the junior youth program in the cluster by accompanying, in addition to what Rodrigo, 2 other animators who are just entering this area of service. She joyfully accepts. So, number 1, in planning the reflection gathering, Andres and his collaborators draw on their first-hand knowledge of the progress of the junior youth groups in their cluster. How effective would the gathering have been without such knowledge, which could have only been acquired by accompanying each and every animator in the cluster? I suppose if you didn't have first-hand knowledge, why not being there?
It would not be as effective if you didn't have first-hand knowledge.
Whatever opinions you have will not be based on actual fact.
They no consulting. They have it consulting. They no have consulting.
Yeah.
If you would get it secondhand, in other words, if you would have one of the people take part of it in that session to report to you, then you'd be getting 2 biases. One bias would be from the reporter, and the second bias would be from the hearer of that report.
You'll have a little change.
Shall we do number 2? A reflection gathering, when properly planned, provides a space where the lessons learned by a growing number of individuals engaged in the common area of activity are synthesized. Each participant contributes to the collective advance in understanding. There are other ways through which knowledge is gained. For example, Andres could have asked each collaborator to prepare a report, and each collaborator, in turn, could have asked the animators with whom he or she is in contact to write individual reports. All this information could have been subsequently synthesized according to one scheme or another. Reports and written accounts, of course, have their place in a learning process, but would, for instance, a report written by Rodrigo to Monica be an appropriate substitute for their conversations? Could collective and studying reports take the place of reflection gatherings among animators? What is there about the nature of a reflection gathering that makes it such an indispensable instrument of learning, one which can be applied in the context of any of the 3 educational imperatives?
Jack, could you define synthesize? This way we will have.
Synthesize, well, I'll tell you what, let me bring it up.
Where are we?
Just at the end of the number 2.
Okay.
Synthesize usually indicates that when you have a bunch of information, being able to pick out certain aspects of the total amount of information in order to look at those specifics and then make determination from it. Let me get the
Well, from what I'm seeing is that having an initial consultation versus, you speak about it, you get on the same page versus having a report and then that person thinking for what they feel and then do any kind of teachings, right? It would, like that conversation that we just had last, that the bias thing happens. You get changes.
Mhm.
Written about meetings that I've been in before where there's a report to be given, but if there's a chance that a conversation or consultation can take place first, there's an opportunity to question the individual as to what was meant, how the information was gathered, what was the effectiveness, what are the results, that they might, in that process, change some of their thoughts about what they were going to report in the first place.
Mhm.
You get to it much quicker that way, too.
So synthesize and well, analyze, I have always thought about analyze as taking it apart, and synthesize, bringing it together, information, bringing it all back together.
I was wondering where the point of analysis is before along your lines. Is it before the synthesis, during the synthesis, or what?
Yeah.
It's
Here's
kind
a
of a moving
definition.
time. I'm sorry, John, please go ahead.
Here's a definition: to combine different ideas, styles, or systems into a single idea or system.
And consensus, yeah.
Say there's another way of looking at this is the information that is analysis. You're bringing divergent ideas when you see each one of them in an analysis, and synthesize is the convergent idea that bring all of them together, somehow makes sense of how they come together and contribute to each other.
But to answer your question, I think it can happen
Simultaneous.
simultaneously at this. I mean, I don't think it's as clear cut that you analyze and then you synthesize, or you synthesize and analyze. I think the whole idea of that the House of Justice is encouraging us on in these reflection meetings is that it's a cyclical thing. You reflect, and in that reflection on either a particular area of action or a particular grouping of people do these reflections, and the cycle starts again. And so then that reflection, then you plan and you act, and then you analyze how things went, and then you do this synthesis again. Okay, so now we're going to plan based on what we know, what we learned, and so on. And so it's this constant cycle, and
To improve.
yeah, to
But question number 2 is asking us, why don't we just have reports and have the reports go back and have the reports be the reflection. But obviously, if you got a report, you're getting somebody else's take on what it is and not the full measure of what really transpired. If you were a part of a group that experienced that, part of the reflection involves the conversation that people would contribute, and it spurs something else in your mind. Hey, I also saw this. So getting it out of the report stage and putting that into a discussion, you're starting to fulfill the aspect of reflection, what it should be.
exactly, and it's what kind of the process you were describing, that it triggered some
That's
other
very
ideas and so on.
I can't help but think about committees, that terrible word, that you have a bunch of people in a committee and they give reports and nothing's done. They just do their report. That's what they're there for, to give their report. It doesn't, so often it seemed like it never made any change in the way the organization approached something. It's just people going through the motions. It wasn't synthesized to have effect.
How would you synthesize, to say this committee giving a report, each one? How would you synthesize if you were there?
Well, I tried it. Committees in an organization are their own little beasties. To have discussions about the reports and to do an analysis of the problems that are brought up, and have everyone make their contribution of how we can change things, what policies might need to be changed, who needs to be talked to, and this and that. Referral to other committees where everything dies.
I think it's just a one-to-one in face-to-face conversation or in the committee meeting. The ego has to be taken out of it, or everything's going to fail. There'll be disruptions of thoughts, maybe negativism. Instead of keeping an open mind,
It's not my job.
that's not my job, could come up, that's somebody else's job, let somebody else.
Obviously, you've heard that before.
So that has to be understood up front somehow, and if you can keep it, if you're the committee chair, or if you're someone who can make a point that we're getting off the point. We need to get back and think about where we're headed, and at the same time keeping the ego out of it. Just because it's your idea doesn't mean it's the best idea. If someone's got a better idea, say, yeah, I like that better than mine.
Oh, don't worry about having so many problems.
You have to keep in mind what your purpose is. Sometimes in an organization committee, it seemed like the purpose was just to have the committee meetings and meet certain requirements. It doesn't matter what the committee really does. But, as far as our purpose here is, of course, you have to keep in mind what reason for your efforts are.
Well, I think that that's always, that is the key, because you can meet and you can consult, but you need to have goals, right? Something towards which you're working, some goals that there's some plan out there. In what we're talking about here is the divine plan, right? That and ways in which we can most effectively help and assist in executing it. But that can be transferred to other levels of what people are doing. So committees, they have to exist for some reason, to be some goal, have some mandate, and to work towards, right? Can we move on?
What have been some of the themes of consultation in reflection gatherings for teachers or children's classes in your cluster?
Okay, read number 4 as well.
What have been some of the themes of consultation in reflection gatherings for those acting as tutors of the main sequence of courses in your cluster?
In our cluster, we haven't had those specific reflection gatherings for junior youth animators or for teachers of children's classes or for tutors of study circles. So in your experience, have you had some reflection gatherings like that? Or, certain themes of consultation, we can assume things would be like in all of those, in both of those, I would say certain themes of consultation would be how to find the children, like the children
Logistics.
and the participants, right? And logistical things like where things are going to be held, involving, in the children's class case, parents and neighborhoods and things like that, and the curriculum and those basic kind of things would probably be talked about and shared in terms of experience. In terms of tutors, how are you going to organize, right? A study circle, what's it going to look like? Who's going to be the participants and things like that. However, I personally haven't participated in those reflection gatherings specific.
I've always thought of themes pretty important because they should define some kind of action that's important, has to create some interest in the way you word the theme so you get the attention of the people. Say, yeah, that sounds pretty nice. I'd like to listen to that. I'd like to be part of it. But there has to be some underlying message that speaks to maybe it's a weakness, maybe it's a fault, maybe it's something the group wants to attain. And so they're going to put this theme out there to see if they can create some interest in getting some input from the people that come, talk about it, and see what plans of action they can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
So the theme, a lot of reflection should be given to how you're going to word the theme to create that for the group.
Thank you. Could you read Umberto number 5?
Sure. Learning requires one or more objects. To say, we want to learn does not mean much unless we specify the object, or at least the area of learning for each of the following activities. The 18 areas of learning are mentioned and you are invited to add to the list.
Okay, so read those.
Okay. Identify teachers, train teachers, provide teachers with ongoing support, organize classes according to grades.
Okay. Anybody, Umberto or anybody, can add one area of what we want to learn. Okay?
We want to recruit children.
Okay, that's great. Anything else? Let's,
Supplies.
supplies, yeah. Mhm. Okay, anything else?
And notice that the bias of this chapter is all the activity is spent for junior youth and children.
Children, and it goes
doesn't-
on to be study circles too.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
address adults or
Yes,
the
it
adult
does.
communities that.
Study circles, which we're doing right now as adults. Yeah.
I think, also fun. Do it through songs, other means, something the kids will have fun in the process. You're actually teaching them, and they're learning something and having a good time all at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. That's a good thing to put down.
What I was doing is I was kind of applying it to my own situation, and since we don't have any children, and I do a lot of work with Bridges Out of Poverty. The training would involve what is the root causes of poverty, what is the language that people in poverty speak, and what are the skills that people in poverty need to possess in order to work their way out of poverty. And also, maybe the last thing was, how do I learn how to put together networks in order to help those people in poverty?
Thank you for sharing that example. That's a good example. Go along. And B, Berto, you can read that
Yes.
one for us too.
In relation to the spiritual empowerment of junior youth, we need to learn to engage youth in conversation that motivates them to serve animators. Enhance the quality of the training offered to animators from junior youth group in different settings. Sustain senior youth groups for 3 years. Provide animators with ongoing support. Make service projects an integral feature of the program.
Okay, so in terms of spiritual empowerment of junior youth, this particular one aspect of the Institute process, we need to learn to do what? So what else? What can anybody add? Anything else?
To integrate arts,
To integrate the arts, yeah.
visit parents,
Visit with parents, yeah, good. Okay, Anything?
Integrate in the community activity.
find service,
Uh,
do community activity or service projects?
no. It's about the community Baha'i has another activity. So how the junior group can be involucrated to be
Oh.
part of the community.
Oh, okay, uh-huh,
I guess.
that's good, that's good, yeah, okay.
I think that we also need to be open to learn,
Mhm.
because as we were talking on Saturday, the teaching is something beautiful, because while you teaching, also you are learning. And
Absolutely,
that is something interesting there.
absolutely. So in relation that we need to learn to be also open to be learners. Very good. And read number C, please.
In relation to the study of the main sequence of institute courses, we need to learn to invite more and more to join the study cycles, complement the study cycles with institute campaigns, enhance the quality of the study of each book of the institute, assist the participants in carrying out the practices suggested in each book, provide tutors with ongoing support.
Anything people can add to that list? So we need to learn, we have a study circle going on. What should we learn to do better here?
How would you go about to enhance? You have a study book which has been through its own studies to come about with more than just one person. So here you have this book of many ideas,
Mhm.
learning something new, and it's saying to enhance.
Good
I
question.
mean, how would
Good
you
question.
enhance it?
Jim touched on something with children's classes. Make it fun. How can we make this more fun? Maybe Behr's mentioned with junior youth involving the arts. Maybe we can involve the arts or an art project with study circles. Maybe we can enhance what we're doing by singing. Or learning prayers put to music. Remember, that was a disaster. I tried to do that the first study that we did. Since I didn't know the tune myself, I couldn't sing it properly with you. So these are ways of enhancing. And there, maybe somebody would want
Versus
to...
just having the book.
Right. Somebody would want to do a skit or something. John has enhanced, actually, already the study of this by giving us pre-reading activities that are out there on the web. So they're pre-reading activities. We can, if we have the time and we take the time, we can do those pre-reading activities that are out there on Sylvania Bahai's site. So that's an enhancement.
One thing I try to do on this is, enhance it in a way that it appeals to 68-year-old men. 68-year-old people. In other words, is there something in the core of these Ruhi institutes that you can upgrade and apply it to adults and have the same learning for adults and whatever they do, rather than have that be for children and junior youth. The book is written as a fictional account of maybe real experiences, but nonetheless it's fictional accounts that refer to children and youth. But is there value in it for me? I think there is, and that's how I approach it. Mm-hmm. In other words, there's going to be similarities, and can I take those similarities and apply it to what I do? So I'm looking at, children and junior youth are important, but is that all there is, or can there be more? Is there a message here that I can take in order to try to make my community better, try to build it up? So this is how I enhance it.
Thank you. So that was a good question about enhancement. Thank you. All right, moving right along, it's Jim's turn. Yes.
Learning in the above-mentioned areas takes place at different levels. At the level of the cluster, a group of dedicated friends intensively engaged in action accumulates experience. They continually reflect on their action in the light of the teachings and the guidance of the Universal House of Justice, and begin to express with increasing clarity the lessons they have learned. One may say in this context that the cluster is learning, but we should remember that in this process, as this process unfolds, every new person who assumes responsibility for an activity has to learn what the cluster knows and, at the same time, contribute to further learning. A culture in which individuals occupy one another in the field of service and in which groups come together periodically in reflection meetings makes it possible for the process to advance continuously. As always, the effectiveness as the process depends on the attributes of the individual, the community, and the institutions. For example, an individual who tends to pronounce "it cannot be done" whenever he or she cannot do something introduces obstacles in the path of learning. Equally, if an institution becomes so wrapped up in abstract theoretical thinking, although such thinking has a place in Baha'i consultation at different levels, that it forgets the need of an individual who's beginning to walk in the path of service. It will have difficulty mobilizing the human resources needed for the constant growth of the community. Similarly, a community in which there are traces of paternalism will pay little attention to the voices of the beginners, and as a result, the flow of knowledge will be interrupted. These three negative examples have been given only to underscore the need for appropriate habits and approaches to be adopted so that accumulated knowledge flows among the three protagonists of the plan in a cluster. You may decide to identify and discuss in your group some of the positive attributes that makes this flow possible.
Okay, so we want the three, who are the three protagonists?
Individual,
Individual.
institutions,
Mhm.
something
Community.
Yeah, community.
Okay, good. So what do you think, Jim?
Oh, well, I think you're different with dealing with different ages of groups, people, individuals, institutions. You got to have your hearing attuned and listen very carefully to what people are saying, what their needs are, what their thoughts are. I think it's important, just like sometimes a company has to take surveys sometimes without identifying who the people are that are giving the answers, to find out their true feelings about their jobs, about the job, about where they work, the employees they work with. So you need to find out, maybe even before you go, who the audience is going to be as you meet the individuals and institutions and communities. Something a little bit about them so you don't walk in cold. I mean, if you're going to be the one that's got to help, and I don't know if that's what this is leading to, is putting ourselves in the place of someone who wants to be able to get along with the three. I think you've got to know beforehand a little bit about what's up, what you've heard, get some more information, and then listen. And then take action as best with their help.
Mm-hmm. So positive attitudes. Anybody have anything else to?
The empathy,
Empathy. Mm-hmm.
tolerance,
Tolerant.
Tolerance. Mm-hmm.
Flexibility.
Flexibility could be the same.
Yeah.
All activity begins with a simple strand of love. That simple strand of love. This is one of the quotes that I don't know the whole song, but it has become a song. And so love is one of those positive qualities. And listening. I loved what you said about
As a
listening.
service activity, we could take your song, form a group, and go to nursing homes.
That's right.
They might throw us out, but at least we've committed to an act of service.
Okay. So, Mariella, number 7.
We should remember, of course, that the learning process with which we are concerned is not limited to the level of the cluster. Regional, national, and international institutions systematize at the corresponding levels. The knowledge generated at the grassroots. Subsequently, the firms in each cluster benefit from what is being learning globally. Your group might now wish to go back to the areas of learning identified in exercise 5 and say a few words about what a cluster with which you are familiar knows at this point about each one.
Well, all those areas from exercise 5, do you remember what they were? Those were children's classes, junior youth empowerment, and study circles, right? And so, does anybody have anything to share about a cluster that they're familiar with, and specifically about that? Otherwise, we can move along.
We have devotional.
In our little cluster, we have some devotional programs going on, but we also have started 2 children's classes in very different, with very different groups of children. And so we're really excited. Mariella and I and Peggy and a few others are helping with one, and
Oh, you started classes?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were just doing service.
no,
Well,
we're
it's service,
doing
but-
we're doing virtues classes with the
Oh.
Sylvania Area Community Service with after-school kids there. So we're doing virtues classes, and then another, and so these are recently just been started in the last few months, these two. And Jennifer has started a junior youth group at a school, Westside Montessori, as an after-school thing with a group, and she has recruited alumni from that school, so older kids that are in high school, to assist her with a junior youth group. And so we have just recently started that, and we are now engaged in a Book 10 study circle, Unit 1, when we will continue, if everybody wants, with Unit 2, when we're done with Unit 1, which is, Unit 2 is on consultation. So focused on consultation, which I think is a skill that we can really perfect and, well, not perfect, but practice
You already do.
and share with everybody.
It's a skill essential to if you are building a divine civilization. Without consultation, you will not have a divine civilization.
And so that's the next book if everybody wants to join.
The two classes you mentioned, and the Montessori after school, that has the roots of some really neat stories that could appear in our monthly bulletin.
Yeah.
Once things get going and more information comes out of it. Deb, I think that would be great for Baha'is in Northwest Ohio.
Yeah, if somebody can write it up for me, yeah, I'll put it in there, because I'm sure there's lots of lessons. And this newsletter goes south, it goes north, it goes, well, not too far east or west, but it hits a lot of people. So, these ideas that you guys have gotten, it might spur in other sections of our area. So,
Do you send a copy to the American Baha'i too?
no, I don't.
You should. Should, because there are a lot of things, maybe they will look at what we are doing too.
Okay.
Well, a lot of times they'll pick up little stories and feature them for the American Baha'i.
Okay, we're done with this section. So, if